And welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I am your host, Mundungus Creevy, alongside my co-host. I think it's actually important enough to show up, Glenn Hauser and Gage Madrid. What's up, gentlemen?
Yeah, Cam had prior obligations.
No, he didn't.
No, not Cam.
No, these weren't prior. These were spur of the moment, and we take a back seat. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not.
Yeah, Cam works for Cronky, so he it's every once in a while these benefits come up, and he scored tonight. So
I hope he has a great time at the game, avoiding responsibilities that he has.
Like you wouldn't be at that sweep either, you know. But whatever.
Right? I hope he has a great time at the game. There was a lot of things going on, but at the same time, not really, right? Like, we all kind of know what's gone on in free agency. We added some players to the Broncos. I think for the majority of the players that were brought in, there was maybe 2, 3 at most that might actually be starters. I think they just added a tackle.
Matt Parrott.
I'm blanking. Yeah, there you go. I'm thinking he's a swing tackle that's probably going to be playing instead of
Cam Fleming.
Man, my brain is just not here. Replacing Cam Fleming.
It's like Mad Libs Creevy over here. Yeah.
Right? Man, I'm trying. Sign an inside linebacker that may or may not start. I think a lot of that also depends on Drew Sanders. There's a lot of things that have happened, but I don't think any massive signings like we thought there was going to be.
I mean, it felt like at this point in time, the Broncos were going to go in the direction of these second-tier free agents, and that's kind of what it's turned into, to be honest, is they weren't going to spend a lot of money this year because they're taking the majority of Russell Wilson's dead cap right now, so they have to be very frugal as to what they invest their resources into this year. So when they can get a value like somebody like a Brandon Jones, for example, or a Cody Barton, these guys who could potentially be starters for you on a pretty low-end budget, that's not bad value for where this team is right now. It's a very similar approach to how the Houston Texans elected to fill their roster in the early stages of their rebuild.
And, Greg Penner used the term yesterday, measured, to describe how the Payton brothers are approaching free agency. And I think that really kind of fits the bill. But I like it, honestly. I like the fact that they took the majority hit this year. I can't believe they got PJ Locke on the contract that they did. Unfortunately, the Justin loss is the one that, for me, stings the most. But long term, I think these decisions that are being made right now are really going to be good and healthy for the team. I mean, to get little Jordan Humphrey for just over $1 million, I think he's going to have a lot of impact this year.
For sure.
So I'm pleased so far with the way things have gone. I do think, and Mike, without stealing any of your thunder later on, I do think that we need to talk about if it's realistic for the Broncos to move up and get a quarterback, what is it really going to cost us?
Well, and that was one of the things that I actually did want to go into, and there's actually a interesting tweet that came out from Albright. There's a couple of them. So one is he just put out a couple hours ago. He said, if you're one of the people that believes that the Broncos can and should be after one of the big 4 QBs in the draft, you have to be rooting for Minnesota to trade up with New England. Otherwise, I don't see how it would even be possible, improbable as it is already. I mean, you're looking at what it might cost to move up into the top 5. I mean, you're like, look at Minnesota, right? Like, they just made a trade where they got a second first-round pick, and you have to assume both of those are going to get traded in a move up to the top 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so at this point, the Broncos might be kind of SOL, to be honest. They just might not have the resources necessary to move up. And if they were to come up to 4, that's where things would get interesting, because you'd have to assume that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be on the board and the Cardinals pass on him. That's if Minnesota trades up with New England. I've heard a lot of rumblings about Jaden Daniels going number 2 overall to the Washington Commanders. So that would kind of leave the Drake May, J.J. McCarthy. And as we all know, the Vikings kind of have some ties to both of those quarterbacks. So whichever one would be left over would be the one that the Broncos would be targeting. There are also some strong rumblings about the New York Giants potentially targeting a quarterback at number 6 overall. So the other logistical trade partner there would be the Los Angeles Chargers if the Cardinals are dead set on taking Marvin Harrison. I don't know if the Arizona Cardinals, or I don't know if the Los Angeles Chargers, would do that kind of trade with the Denver Broncos. We wouldn't be able to see an interdivisional trade like that. So the avenues for the Broncos trading up to get one of these quarterbacks are closing. The other avenue that I could see is maybe New England going with Marvin Harrison. That would stir up the Cardinals' plans, and that would potentially make them a trade-up candidate. And Minnesota could trade up with the Cardinals, and then they would have – the Broncos would be able to maybe make a move up, maybe with the Giants if they want to trade back and go with Daniel Jones and Drew Lock. It's just these avenues for the Broncos getting a young quarterback in the top 4 this year. It's just closing and closing.
Now, Gage, you had some opinions yesterday on Twitter, hey, Jeff, about the Patriots and why taking a quarterback would not be the smartest decision for them. Do you want to kind of spread the word up?
Yeah, in fact, let me go ahead and bring that tweet up again just for some reference here, because the Patriots' offensive roster is far from where it needs to be. Their starting left tackle is Connor McDermott. They only have really 2 reliable offensive linemen, David Andrews and Michael Onwenu. Their wide receiver 1 right now is either Kendrick Bourne, who's coming off of a torn ACL, or Demario Pop Douglas. They don't have the weaponry for their young quarterback to be successful. And we've seen time in and time out a young quarterback being thrown into these lackluster situations. Their confidence gets wrecked early on, and that's it. You know, the Patriots have Jacoby Brissett on the roster. I don't see why Brissett shouldn't be the starter, at least out the gate. And maybe the Patriots would be better off punting on a quarterback at 3, taking the almost surefire prospect in Marvin Harrison Jr. And maybe if a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix Jr. falls to the 2nd round, that's the direction that the New England Patriots should go.
Well, and it also really does sound like the Cardinals are shopping for, like they want to get out of 4.
Yep, they definitely are taking calls, but I mean, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is a tough pass, if you have the opportunity to get him and you don't take him, that could be a decision that haunts your franchise for a long time.
Especially since you're set at quarterback.
Yep.
You know, they have an established solid quarterback that, you know, Murray, when he came back, he was really playing well, and he was having that team contending, if not winning, those games at the end. The thing that scares me a little bit about the price tag to move up that far is I've been sitting here trying to figure out any type of scenario that didn't include PS2, and I cannot come up with one.
Yeah, because the Broncos don't have a lot of leverage not having a 2nd-round pick right now, because they can't make a similar move that the Vikings did to come up and get that 1st-round pick later on.
See, and then at the same time, like you look at the L'Jarius Sneed trade, right? Like, is there that big of a market for PS2? Like, I don't think that we're going to get what we think we would get out of PS2. Like you would in our minds, PS2 is like 2 number 1s. That's what we need to get. You're not going to get that. You might get a 2nd, maybe.
You probably would get a first,
you think so?
Not multiple first. Yeah, L'Jarius Sneed was on his way out the building in Kansas City. Denver would be better suited keeping Pat Surtain than having that low of an asking price. Kansas City simply could not afford Sneed, so the Titans got what, a 3rd and a 7th for Sneed? Is that what it was?
2nd and a 5th.
Sneed for,
3rd and
I thought it was 3rd and a 7th. 3rd and 5th. So I mean, realistically, you have to think you either get realistically, you have to think like it's either 1 first or like a 2nd and a 4th, or a 2nd.
They wouldn't take that.
Something like that.
That's
what I'm saying.
The first is the only avenue to take it.
Yeah, and I don't think that the trade market for PS2 is what we think it is. Wow.
I know
Right?
it's like we've missed our window to cash in on some of these trades. When you think of like not too long ago, Chase Claypool got a big haul, in a trade, and now we're talking about would Pat Surtain even bring a one? But Gage had it right. KC had really played their hand with Snead and let it be known that they were shopping him, even though they franchised him. It was to trade him. So if they didn't have a lot of suitors, they weren't going to get a nice haul.
Yeah, and,
sure.
and I definitely do think trade market value for corners is down, kind of like safeties. There really wasn't anything going on with safeties, which is why Justin Simmons was released and not traded. But Snead does walk away with a 4-year, $76.4 million deal with $55 million guaranteed and a $20 million signing bonus. I think that's in the ballpark of what PS2 is going to get, but I'm assuming it'll be more. I'm assuming that's like the low end of what we're looking at giving Surtain, next year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pat Surtain's probably going to break the bank at corner. Him and Sauce Gardner. Surtain will set it, and then Sauce will probably end up breaking it. So I think there'll be at least a 1-year window there where Pat Surtain's the highest paid corner in the NFL, and deservedly so.
And then Ian Rappaport, continuing with what we were talking about with quarterbacks draft. At the AFC coaches breakfast, he asked Sean Payton how realistic it was for him to be a potential trade-up team. Sean Payton said realistic. He said they'll look at it and noted it's good to be Monty right now. Hard to know what it will cost eventually. Doesn't
Monty
really
being the GM of the Cardinals, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But he also did say on top of that, and this is what Mike Kliss reported, to score more points, the Broncos have to do what? And Sean Payton said,
sacks.
Number one, can't take as many sacks. So I am still going to go under the assumption. My belief is that Denver does not take a first-round quarterback. I think they either stick at 12 and go offensive line, or trade back in the first and get like Michael Pratt in the third, or Spencer Rattler in the third, or maybe a Bo Nix in the second if they get one from a trade back. But I don't think they take a quarterback in the first.
The way that Benjamin Albright's talking right now, Bo Nix will likely be there at 30, 40. That being said, though, the Broncos might be better suited trading into the back half of the first round somehow, because they might want to get that 5th-year option on Bo Nix. So maybe trade down, get another player, accumulate a 2nd-round pick, and then come back up and get Bo Nix at 31, because Kansas City's not trading with Denver at 32. So maybe you can give John Lynch a call and see if he wants to trade down, and that could be a realistic scenario right there. I think that it's looking less and less likely that the Broncos take Bo Nix at 12 unless they absolutely fall in love with him and are worried that another team's going to fall in love with him and they have to take him. But from the way guys like Benjamin Albright are talking, he's going to fall probably into the end of the first round, if not out of it. So that's probably where Denver could target a guy like Bo Nix.
Did you guys happen to see the Bo Nix interview with Colin Cowherd the other day?
I did not.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. I mean, if you can find it, Cam actually posted it on his wall a couple days ago. It's definitely worth watching. It was about a 20-minute interview. And, Colin name dropped Sean Payton a few times and says that they're actually close friends, and referenced that, Bo Nix would appear to be a Sean Payton type of quarterback. It was a very interesting interview, and I definitely think worthwhile watching.
The more and more I study Bo Nix, the more I see a Sean Payton quarterback. I see a lot of Drew Brees, his anticipation, he does have some accuracy issues at times, but the rest of the time, man, he's really, really solid at just anticipating and firing over the middle with, excuse me, that's a big component of the Sean Payton quarterback. I just see the prototypical Sean Payton quarterback when I study Bo Nix more and more. It just makes a lot of sense.
And also his experience, I think, would play well with Sean's coaching style and the fact that he has 60 games as a starter before even playing a game in the NFL. I mean, that's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm. And he's shown the ability to thrive both in and out of structure, in structure at Oregon, and then to some extent out of structure at Auburn. A lot of previous reports have come out stating that Bo Nix's struggles at Auburn were because he clashed with some of the members of the coaching staff there, and it just wasn't the right fit. So I think those struggles that he had at Auburn at certain times could be more attributed to that than what he is as a player. I think we saw the true Bo Nix on display at the University of Oregon, and I think that's going to be the Bo Nix that we see at the NFL level.
Yeah. Some other things that Sean Payton was talking about at the coaches' breakfast. They were talking about Stidham, which at this point, I'm assuming Stidham is the presumed starter unless someone has brought it. I mean, I'm assuming we're going into the season with Jarrett Stidham as the starter.
He'll certainly be taking the first snaps in like week 1 of training camp, but Sean said there will be competition. He did say that, and when he talked to the Broncos media for about 38 minutes or something like that, he said there will be competition for Jarrett Stidham. It's not going to be his job outright.
Yeah, he wouldn't even concede that would be the case, Mike. That he's the leader in the clubhouse at the moment, even before any sort of workouts or the draft has even happened. He wouldn't even say that. I did play the Sean Payton drinking game the other day, and every time he said relative to, I had to take a swig, and I was hammered by 14 minutes in. Favorite phrase.
I gotta say, man, Sean Payton does spew out a lot of verbal diarrhea.
He does.
Yeah.
He loves holding forth too.
Yep. He also talking about Stidham, said that he doesn't think we've seen Stidham's ceiling yet, and he's curious to find out what it is. I think that's a good thing. There were a lot of people that were hating on Jarrett Stidham starting, and I just don't see it. Granted, I am very optimistic, like all the time, but I still think, right? I just privately view
checking.
When I slam everybody. But to be fair, like we saw Stidham play last year in 2 games, running the offense that was tailored to Russell Wilson. I'm excited to see Jarrett Stidham in the offense that Sean Payton brought him in to run.
Sure. And I think that that's where we will see a better gauge of where Jarrett Stidham is at as a player. I think that some of the issues that we saw with Jarrett Stidham, both in training camp and the preseason, as well as the 2 starts that we had, could be partially predicated to, again, this was an offense that was designed to be a Russell Wilson offense. And per the master of this offense, Drew Brees, this was not a true Sean Payton offense. Jarrett Stidham was brought in to run a true Sean Payton offense. So I think that's what he really means when he says, like, we haven't seen Jarrett Stidham's ceiling yet because we haven't seen what he can do in this offense tailored to him. But I think from a physical talent perspective, we know what Jarrett Stidham is. He's not the most accurate quarterback. He doesn't have the biggest arm, but he can make some good plays with his legs. He can make some good stuff happen out of structure, and he does have a good enough arm to get the job done. So Jarrett Stidham is a guy that if the Broncos do have to end up starting him week 1, it's not full-blown like DEFCON 1 disaster levels, but it could be trouble long-term down the line for the Broncos if they don't adequately address the quarterback position. That's why I know myself and Cam are both such strong advocates of the Broncos getting a quarterback for this season in one of the top rounds to at least give Stidham that competition. And if they determine that, say, Bo Nix, for example, isn't that guy that they want to move forward with, or maybe it's Michael Penix, they could very easily be in position to draft their quarterback of the future in 2025. But just rolling with Jarrett Stidham, at the end of the day, ownership's got to sell tickets. They have to be able to sell this to the fan base. And I think just Jarrett Stidham would be a very hard sell and might cause a lot of fans to abstain from attending games this year, or just abstain from even watching because they know what the season is going to be. At least if you end up with somebody like a Bo Nix or even a Michael Penix, even though he's not my favorite flavor, you could at least inject some sort of optimism into this fan base, which, let's just be honest, really needs it.
Yeah. One of the
So
other
let me ask you this, because usually the quarterback is the face of the team. When you drive up to Empower Field and they've got the banners hanging from the side of the stadium, and it's generally two players. What two players are going to be hanging this in week 1 this year?
I think we can safely bet Surtain's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Cortland.
Yeah, probably Cortland.
Probably.
I mean, think about that. Like our choices for that are so thin. I mean, we don't even know if the top choice is even going to be on the roster based on what decisions they make and how aggressive the Broncos brass want to be.
Yeah, first name in my mouth was Simmons. I was like, oh, never mind. Now, speaking of Justin Simmons, like as a Justin Simmons fan, as we all are, except for Cam, obviously we want Justin Simmons to come back. I don't think it's going to happen, but it seems like he's really taking his time and deciding on the right team. Because there's a lot of people asking, why hasn't Justin Simmons signed anywhere? Well, at this point, he's allowed to be picky where he wants to go, right? Like, he's not just going to go anywhere.
This is only time to be picky. I mean, this is the chance.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't had that luxury.
He just wants the best fit for him and, quite frankly, the best fit to win a championship. There are links to him potentially going to the Philadelphia Eagles, but that might not be the best fit for him. Maybe he feels like the best fit is elsewhere and another team gives him a better chance to win a championship. So I think Simmons is taking his time and being very calculated with this. It was publicly reported that he had talked to the Tennessee Titans. I don't think Tennessee, a team that's also kind of in a rebuilding phase, isn't going to be the most desired destination for a guy like Justin Simmons coming off of a rebuilding team for the past 8 seasons here in Denver. So he really, I feel like, wants to make sure that he makes the right decision, not only for himself, but for his family as well. I know that his family is probably going to stay in Colorado full time, but during the season, he probably would want his family with him. So you got to decide on various factors like schools and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, he's got a lot to think about right now.
I mean, the two teams that I think could be ideal for him would be the Houston Texans or the Detroit Lions. And Houston, not only because they're such an up-and-comer, I think the expectations are going to be through the roof this season for Houston. Also, it's in close proximity to Colorado in terms of the flight is not that far in order for him to get back versus an East Coast team. I think some of these things do factor into it.
Yeah. One of the other things that was talked about at the coaches meeting, Sean Payton was asked, and I'm just going to summarize. I'm not going to quote word for word. He was asked, was it difficult to decide to let Russ go? And his response was, no.
No.
No. I love it. That's the greatest burn ever.
That gives me the same vibes as Vic Fangio telling the media to wish Teddy Bridgewater a happy birthday, and then them saying it's Drew's birthday too, and Vic being like, "Yeah, it is." Like,
that
gives me the exact same vibes, man. You could just tell the animosity that existed between Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. I think towards the end they tried to keep it as professional as they could, but the blow-ups on the sideline, especially the one in Detroit, I think that was a very clear indication of how that relationship was. And yep, there's clearly no love lost there from Sean Payton at all.
But conversely, George Payton was sitting outside talking to the media, and he was a lot more diplomatic when talking about Russ and even saying that it wasn't all Russ, that the issues that they had, and even took some of the ownership himself on to some of the problems that they had, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't think any Bronco fan is going to say that George Payton is not without some serious ownership of some of the issues that have happened in the last 3-4 years, for sure. But it was funny how the good cop, bad cop routine worked in Orlando this past, yesterday.
George was correct, though. It wasn't all Russell Wilson. We can
Right.
all sit here and say that, but Sean Payton, as far as he's concerned, he was brought in to fix the Denver Broncos, not fix Russell Wilson. He did the best that he could for as long as he could with Russell Wilson until he determined that he couldn't move forward with it any longer. And he ripped the Band-Aid off, and I don't think he has a single regret about doing it.
Now, there's two other names that were floating around social media as far as quarterbacks go for the Broncos. One I just saw popped up today. I don't know where all the hoopla is coming from. But one is Ryan Tannehill was brought up last week a lot on Twitter because of the potential of getting him at a lower cost in the next round of free agency. And then today I saw Dak Prescott's name floating around.
Mhm.
And I don't know where that came from, but I wanted to ask you guys about it.
All right,
I can elaborate a little more on Dak because I actually made a video about that today. So Dak, it was announced today that him and the Cowboys are going to move forward with this season on his current contract terms. So that paves an avenue for him to enter free agency in 2025. Benjamin Albright made a post on Twitter that kind of maybe indicated that could be a direction Sean Payton's interested in. So that's where some of this smoke surrounding Dak Prescott to Denver, not in 2024, but in 2025 is coming from. As far as Ryan Tannehill is concerned, of course, he's going to be mentioned because he's probably one of the more appealing names on that second tier of free agents. But I think the Broncos have made it pretty clear that they're not going to dip their toes in the free agent market. Sean Payton talked about how there were some free agents that they kind of missed on. I think that free agent was Sam Darnold. I think that was the quarterback that they were maybe going to be interested in bringing in. So I think that after missing on that, they're content with rolling with somebody like Jarrett Stidham, who I don't think the Broncos view the separation between Ryan Tannehill and Jarrett Stidham is wide enough where it's worth investing the resources into Tannehill when you basically have a similar level of quarterback already in building in Jarrett Stidham.
So with the Dak Prescott deal also is he cannot be franchise tagged again. So he is going to be a free agent next after the season. And depending on how well the Cowboys do this year, and chances are they're going to choke as they typically do. If they have a successful season, he is in line for a massive contract. Ian Rappaport said that if Dak plays well, the contract would make Kirk Cousins look like JV. So the Broncos, I think, are immediately priced out of that, especially since they have the remaining 40% of the Russell Wilson cap hit coming in next year. But that's where that started happening, and should be very, very interesting. I mean, now you wonder, I mean, are the Cowboys in line to pick a quarterback in this draft as well? Just a lot of different factors come to play.
I think Dallas is truly giving this like a trial year, if you will, with Dak Prescott. They want to see if he can have some sustained postseason success. And if he's able to do that this year, then I think that the Dallas Cowboys will be confident in paying him. But if he doesn't deliver, then I think that Dallas is going to be content moving on and finding somebody else. So I don't think they're going to give him that threat by taking a quarterback, at least early on this year. Maybe they're in contention for someone like a Michael Pratt or a Jordan Travis or maybe a Spencer Rattler or somebody of that caliber of quarterback. But I don't think Dallas is going to take somebody like a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, for example, that could maybe be a direct threat to Dak.
This whole conversation just kind of hurts your heart a little bit, though, right? Like back in the day when Dak Prescott was coming off the board, Paxton Lynch was also going to be coming off the board. There were three teams interested, the most at least: Broncos, Cowboys, and Chiefs. Broncos moved up to take Paxton Lynch. Cowboys took Dak Prescott. Chiefs took Chris Jones.
Yeah, the Broncos moved up to take Paxton to snake the Cowboys because they wanted it. And Dak, if I'm not mistaken, had recently, while he was in college, had gotten a drunk driving arrest, and that's why his stock had dropped to the point where he was picked in the 4th round.
He also missed his pre-draft flight to Denver. So that was something that maybe rubbed the organization a little bit the wrong way, was that he had missed that flight.
We traded up for Paxton Lynch. Just never forget.
Never forget.
And they thought Dak Prescott was the one with work ethic issues.
Right? Jeez. All right. So moving on from that, obviously we'll talk more draft as the draft gets closer. Honestly, nobody knows what they're going to do. We can sit here and hope and wish and pray, but we have no idea what's going on. But a couple things that did come out before we get into the uniforms. There were some rule changes that have taken effect. I know that Gage has made a video about at least one of them. But the big one was that the NFL banned the hip drop tackle. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make during the season. I don't know how often they're actually going to call that. But it does seem like all these new rules they keep coming out with are to screw over the defense. Like, you can't hit above a certain level. You can't hit below a certain level. Now you can't, like, bring your weight down. Like, if you're a 195-pound corner and you're trying to take down a 265-pound tight end, you don't have that many options unless you blow him up and then you get a flag, right? So I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, but at the same time, I understand why people are saying it's not fair that they're taking that out.
It's kind of opened up Pandora's box in a certain extent, because this now is going to lead to a lot of defenders, quite frankly, going low at players' knees, which is what players say they don't want, because they can't go high or else they're going to get a flag. Kareem Jackson knows that. And they can't do the hip drop tackle. So what other options do these guys have? And if you're trailing your opponent, if you're behind him, what are you supposed to do? At that rate, the NFL is just saying, okay, just let him run by you. You can't make an effort to tackle him. Otherwise, you're going to get a foul. It's so frustrating. And it basically is telling defensive players that your job does not matter, and we only care about offensive players. I saw a tweet where I could very easily see this happen. Patrick Mahomes trying to spin out of the pocket and lowering himself kind of down to the ground where he knows the only way that a defender could bring him down is by hip dropping him, and he could lead to a foul and could basically like end a game like that. And Tony Romo would be gassing him all up, calling it the best play in football. Oh my God. It's so frustrating, because it feels like these NFL owners who have not had any experience playing themselves are trying to tell the professionals how to do their job when they have no clue how to actually put your body in the proper position to make these tackles. It's so frustrating when these guys are being told what to do by guys who have never done it before.
So Rich's last comment, if you don't mind pulling that back up, Mike, is I think a really important one, because this is when Kareem was getting fined last year and Justin stepped to the podium and spoke from the heart. One of the main things that Justin was saying last year was that the league is only saying what they can't do, but they're not showing them the proper way or what is now legal. And it's clear that the players are still feeling that way, that they're being held accountable, but not being taught exactly the right way that they're expected to tackle, to do things. With the hip drop, I have a lot of mixed feelings on it, because it does seem that there are so many rule changes that are being made with the safety in place, and players have not been hurt prior to that point. Like all these rule changes with the kickoffs and things, and they're citing the player injuries. And I really don't think that there's a huge influx of player injuries from that. we have seen quite a bit of players be injured by the hip drop. Guys like Tony Pollard, like, Mark Andrews, players like that have been out for the year for long periods of time based on that. But you can't take away every way that the players are able to tackle. So if you do institute this new rule that they can't do it this way, you have to lighten up on other ways, because it is so lopsided at this point in favor of the offense. It's not even funny.
Well, and my biggest thing is they keep like talking about putting these new rules in on things that I don't think really matter that much. Like they're sitting there talking about the tush push and they're talking about the hip drop tackle, but you're not addressing the obvious refereeing issues and the things like that actually affect the game, right? Like now you're adding another rule and another call into the ref's hands when they can't even handle what they're already supposed to be doing. Like, why are we sitting here talking about these stupid things when we should be talking about how to fix a refereeing problem, whether it be full-time referees, whether it be, reviews up in the booth and, before the umpire gets to call it. Like, there are so many other things that we could be doing to try to fix the game. Why are we worried about this?
Mm-hmm. Mike, spit and fire.
I try. One of the other things was the kickoff. The kickoff rule was changed. It's basically going to look like the XFLs, right? From last year is what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
Personally, I like it. I like the way that the XFL did it. I like the fact that we now have that explosive potential play back, because for the last couple seasons, it's just a touchback. And I mean, there's really no point in even going out there and having a kick, because they're just going to kick it out of the back of the end zone. I think this is a way, and a good way personally. And I know Gage has other thoughts, and that's fine. I think this is a good way to bring the kickoff back with player safety in mind.
I guess I'm just kind of looking at this more of like a defensive perspective and kind of like a just strategic management perspective of it. I just feel like one weapon that the Broncos have is the ability for our kickers to induce a lot of touchbacks and by extent limit big returns from our opponent. This is going to lead to more big returns. I don't know if you'd view that more as a positive or a negative thing, because that could lead to more big returns against your team, Right. And again, that's such a big weapon for the Broncos that's going to be taken away, because now if you kick the ball through the end zone for a touchback, the ball comes out to the 30-yard line as opposed to the 25-yard line. The NFL is basically saying you're better off kicking it short and allowing a return here in that return zone between the goal line and the 20-yard line, because you'll likely get better field position that way. But it's also, again, going to lead to a lot of offenses starting off like at their own 50-yard line, and it's going to lead to a lot of short fields for offenses. And it's just another thing for me that kind of puts the defense at a bit of a disadvantage. And I don't know, man. I guess I'm just kind of looking at it from that side as more of a defensive mind.
Yeah. See, I'm pretty open-minded to it, just because, and the term was used that in kickoffs have just become basically ceremonial. And I thought that was actually a perfect thing, because you didn't need to rush into the room if you were getting, a beer and some chips, and the kickoff was happening, because you knew it was going to be a touchback most likely. And now that's not going to be the case. And it does give us an opportunity. I know it does take away the mile high advantage, but now this is going to give Marvin Mims a really good opportunity to show his stuff as a returner, and expand upon his success last year. And one of the points that I heard today was that one of the reasons it was really pushed to get through right now and rather than in May is because now you're going to have to look at some of your special teams personnel a little bit differently. And so as the draft approaches, some of the guys that are being picked mid to late rounds or signed as undrafted free agents are going to kind of have to fit the mold, because so many of them are going to get their starts as on the special teams unit. They're going to have to fit the mold of the new format of the kickoffs. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting point. It'd be, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the guys who they pick and how they play a role in the special teams unit once the season rolls around.
Yeah, and just like it was kind of pointed out in the chat right now, there could be a lot more bigger bodies on the return team.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this is going to work. I mean, you look at the last, what's it been, 5-6 seasons of the kickoff rules the way they are. I mean, with the kickoff rules the way that they were, there would be no Devin Hester, there would be no Dante Hall, like these guys that were making Pro Bowls and making all pros based on kick returns. They wouldn't be there without the returns that they did in special teams. And so I'm excited to see what's going to happen. When you look at the XFL and the kickoffs that they had, on average, I believe that the returns were about 20 to 25 yards. So they were ending up starting at the 25 to 30 anyways. Again, nothing against the XFL, but the XFL is not the NFL. I'm assuming it's going to be more than that. But I'm excited to at least have that play back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now for the biggest news. And this is the part of the offseason that I hate, because the fact that we're talking about new uniforms is the biggest news. It's kind of sad. But there's nothing really going on right now, so we're going to talk about it. And Mario Vitanzi was on this long time ago. Like, he said new uniforms are going to happen. I'm going to read kind of what he put down, what he knows is going to happen, and then I'm going to pull up the best example I could find of a mock-up of a potential new uniform that kind of matches what he's talking about. So here's what he knows about the Broncos uniforms for next season. They'll be updated. We do know that it's the same colors, same logo. They're just updating the uniform. The biggest change is going to be the removal of those parenthesis stripes on the sides of the jerseys and the pants. The tops will likely be solid, so they can mix and match different tops and bottoms without having to worry about the weird mismatch stripe thing that we had with the white shirt and the blue pants and the different colored stripes. It was weird. There's also going to be an emphasis on 5280 and the mountains to some extent. I believe they're also altering the front of the jerseys and the stripe on the helmet. And then aside from that, they'll also be bringing back the throwbacks that the team wore from 1968 to 1996. So that's the powder blue with the orange with the rock and the old D. The committee actually got to decide which throwbacks to bring back. And believe it or not, the brown and yellows were on the table, which would have been exciting. Remember when they used to wear those socks and then twist them so that you can see it like spinning around? That was really cool. But thankfully, nobody wanted the brown and the yellow uniforms back.
They were on the table, which were promptly lit on fire.
So the best thing I could find to match that description, and again, this could be way off. I did hear that Damani Leach was, during the season, players were bringing him fan mock-ups of uniforms, and he was, I guess they were considered. I don't know how much they were considered, but this was the closest mock-up I could find. And this is one that's recently been going on Twitter. I don't know if the helmets are going to be white or not. I'm assuming they went with white because of snow-capped, and kind of carrying on with that. But I do like the way that they're able to mix and match, right? Like on the ends, you've got the orange, the white, the blue, the white, the blue, the orange, and the blue, white, orange. I mean, I do like it. I like the solids. I like, my big thing is I don't want I don't know if you can see it, but like on the pants, like right on the right side is like over on the side where it shows the side of the pants. It says 5280 on there. And then the shoulder pads has like a blue mountain outline on it.
I can't believe the Broncos are going to sponsor the 5280 podcast. That is
right. That's pretty.
I mean, hey, I'll take it, man.
I haven't even gotten a call, but it's fine.
It definitely seems that it is going to be a white helmet because, again, they introduced that snow cap last year. I think that was kind of to test the water a little bit there. And if the Broncos are indeed going to bring back the throwbacks with the powder blue, that's your second helmet. So I don't like the white helmet. I really don't. I think the Navy helmet is so clean. But I think that at this point, the Broncos have kind of shown their hand a little bit that it's going to be the white helmet.
And
I love it that the shade of blue is going to be the same. The logo is going to be the same. It's a full redesign. It's like, well, it sounds like two major components of the colors and the logo being the same. But so I am again. I loved the Boggins type design with the old D and the royal blue. That I just absolutely love those. Again, I am open minded about this. I think it's gonna. I would let us remind you that this is a fan art, and I don't even know who we can give credit to on this one, but I would like to see a stripe on the sock rather than solid sock. But I'm not hating any of these uniforms. I an orange pant with a white jersey, reminiscent of the late 70s, early 80s would be kind of cool.
It's Hoffman Design Company.
Okay.
And I'm not sure. I don't remember who actually is designing the uniforms, but I think Hoffman Design was one of the companies that the Broncos had gone to about designing the new uniform. So that's why this is a pretty good mock-up of what it might look like, just because this is one of the ideas that was pitched. So power button. I didn't hit the power button too many times. I almost bought something.
So I mean, the uniforms are totally in line with the way this offseason has gone and how the draft is going to go. Like, we're completely speculating and completely in the dark, and so all of this is going to be a total surprise. So I mean, this could determine to be one of the most exciting off seasons in certainly my lifetime of watching Bronco football. I mean, there's just so many variables out there, and it's an exciting time to be a Bronco fan, even though the success has not been there.
Mm-hmm.
And
a couple of other details about the uniforms as well. Oh my God. A couple of other details about the uniforms as well. They put out an announcement on Twitter with white letters in a new font. That font might be the font that the player name is going to be. So that's something to keep an eye on. And the logo itself, although it's going to be the same horse, it looks like it's going to be updated a little bit, a little more shiny, a little more texture to it. So I think they're going to
Lucifer.
Yes, Bree's happy that Lucifer is staying, but no, I think that I think that this is going to be a nod to old and a nod to new at the same time.
Yeah. Anything else that you guys want to talk about? That's all that I had, all that I saw. There's not a whole lot going on before the draft. So anything else you guys want to talk about?
That's all we got.
All right. Anything else in the chat people want to talk about?
No, we appreciate people jumping in.
Oh. We do, and it has been a good show. It's a short show, but that's fine. There's not as much to talk about. There has been Biggie Bronco, Richie Richie, D-Rock, Sports Nonsense and Whiskey, Jay, Brian. Oh, who else? Yeah, Bronco Bill.
Bronco.
Boggins, we want to thank everybody for joining us in the chat.
And speaking of Boggins, I would love to congratulate on behalf of the network.
Baby!
Marcus and his wife on their new baby. That's very exciting.
Hey, 5 more and you catch me. Get on it.
Still got quite a ways to go, man.
I don't know if we pulled this up, but Bill called something way old school. The D is way old school. Talk about going back to yesteryear.
Bill doesn't like
throwback
change.
Denver D. I'm sorry, I love it.
I know, but Bill.
Okay, but this is the thing that gets me, right. Like, Bill doesn't like change, right? But he's perfectly fine with the change from the old D to the new logo. But he's not cool with the change from the new or the current logo back to the old D. but wouldn't that just be putting it back to where it was and getting rid of the change? How can you be against change?
Yeah, Bill doesn't strike me as somebody that would be mad about going back to old school.
I know, like if we started having sock hops again and going to, to this.
If he could help bring back the Model T, which was his first car, he would be just overjoyed.
Sorry, Bill.
Like those listen, we saw a lot of mock-ups. Like honestly, the one that Boggins did with the old colors with the old D, but with like a new style to it was incredible. I wish we would have moved back to those, but we didn't. But yeah, make sure that you check out every single other show. I'm assuming that was his first car. The horse and buggy. We'll go with that. Make sure you check out every other show that's on the network. We have shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with the neighborhood coming back during the season, or if the Avalanche make the playoffs, which looking like they might. So make sure you check those out. And obviously, the absolute best way that you can support and help the network is just what Clayton said. Smash that like button, share it, put your comments in. That helps us so much, and we would greatly appreciate it. We will see you guys later. We love the Broncos. We love the Avalanche. We love Broncos country for the most part. Cam, show up for work at some point in time. That would be nice. We'll see you guys later. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out.